In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to model a room from measurements. This can be handy because sometimes we get a little bit separated in Blender from the scale of our objects, and we don't necessarily make things in a real world scale, which can throw off light, it can throw off physics simulations, it can throw off a lot of things later down the road. So it's good to be able to model something from existing measurements. So I've taken the liberty in advance of measuring the classroom that I teach in, and it's got kind of a funny little pop out that will give us a little bit of a challenge here, make it so it's not just a cube. But the first thing you might notice, because I'm located in the United States of America, the tape measure that I used is an imperial units tape measure, so we're going to actually change our units in Blender here first. So let's go over to our scene properties and twirl down this little bar that says units on it. You can see by default we're using the metric system, which makes a lot of sense. It'd be nice if we could get on that in the United States, but we're not there yet, so we're going to change that to imperial. And rather than working in feet, I'm going to work in inches. That way I don't have to deal with any decimals and fractions of a base 12 system. So now that we've got that swapped out, I've got my reference image up. I'm actually just going to use my default cube here, and I'm going to change the dimensions. So you can see that in X it's 78.7 inches, and I'm going to change that to 204 inches. Oh, sorry, actually, not 204, 312 inches. 312 inches in X. In Y, it's going to be 350 inches, 29 feet 2 inches, in other words. And in Z, the height of the room is, and I actually didn't put this in there, it's 127 inches, 10 feet 7 inches. So I'm just going to do that one from memory since I forgot to write it down. But so at this point we have roughly the right volume of the room. We need to create this little pop-in. So here's kind of the trick that I use. I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'm going to use my loop cut and slide tool. Now this one's a little different from the loop cut tool that's over here in the GUI. So I'm actually going to use the keyboard shortcut because it preloads a slide tool, a slide command after my loop cut. So I'm going to hit Control R. And now I have my loop cut preloaded here. I can loop cut along any axis as long as I mouse over an edge that's perpendicular to the cut that I want to make. So I'm mousing over this top edge here because I want to cut backwards. And over here you can see that I need vertices. I need the ability to bend this wall 17 feet from this far right wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click to commit to my loop cut, and then it preloads a slide command, and I'm going to slide this all the way to the right as far as it will go, and then click to commit. So what I've done there, if I just leave it, that's actually going to create a problem, because I have 1, 2, 3, 4 corners here, 4 corners which have vertices on them, and for each one of those vertices, for each one of those positions, I actually have 2 vertices in place because I slid this new loop cut all the way over. So I have vertices and edges and 2 faces exactly on top of each other, which is a real problem. That would come back to bite me later. And if I were to deselect this now and try to select it again, and if I were to select the wrong edge and bring it back the other way, I would actually be turning my mesh inside out, which would end up messing up my normals, and it would look super weird. So this is a little bit counterintuitive, this first step here. So before I deselect anything, I'm going to move this edge again, and I'm going to move it exactly 204 inches. So I'm going to do that in the x-axis, G, X, minus 204, enter. And what that does is that gives me a 17-foot edge right here, and that corresponds exactly to the length of the edge that I need here. So now I haven't bothered measuring this angle or anything because I have enough information to recreate it actually without dealing with the angles. So I know that from this corner to this corner is 6 feet, so we're kind of going to do the same thing again. Control R, slide all the way to the left, and then I'm going to GX 70 for 70 inches, enter. Okay, so now this is a 6-foot edge right here. This one's 17 feet, this one's 6 feet. And I know that this difference between the, well, I happen to know that this is the west wall of my classroom, that this west wall is 38 inches farther west than this pop-in here. So now I'm going to select this edge and hit GY38, enter. Okay, and we've actually accurately created this shape here. If you were to overlay it, you would see that that actually fits. Now we need to create our doorway. So what I'm going to do, I can see that the door is 3 feet wide. The edge of the door is 32 inches from this corner, and the door is 7 feet tall. So what I'm going to do is do the same thing here. Loop cut, Control R, slide it all the way to the right, and then it's 32 inches from that corner, so I'm going to GX minus 32, enter. So this edge right here and this edge, these are now 32 inches. So my door is going to be within this area here. I know the door is 36 inches wide, so I'm going to loop cut one more time, all the way to the right, GX minus 36, enter. You can see that that left just a little narrow gap here. That's actually pretty accurate for the room. And then the door is 7 feet tall, so Control R, slide all the way to the bottom. Now I'm going to move this in Z, GZ 84 inches, enter. Okay, and this face will end up being my door. So now I can just select that face and I can delete it. And there's my room. Now, my walls currently have no thickness, and that's a bit of a problem. You can do this in a couple of different ways, and I've tried a few experiments to see what the best way is. And you know, you could extrude the walls outward to give them some thickness, or you could try, I've tried the Solidify Modifier, and the Solidify Modifier seems like it would probably be the best choice, except it kind of behaves a little strangely here. So let's just solidify everything by -1, and I'm going to check this box for even thickness. You can see that that kind of works, except when we get here in our corners around this door, it's a little funny, and this door threshold, of course, is a real problem. So let's get rid of that Solidify Modifier. What I've found is handy to do, and this will actually kind of be handy later as well, is I'm going to separate the ceiling and the floor from the walls. So first of all, let's name our object, because we're going to get multiple objects here. I'm going to call this classroom, and I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm just going to select all these top faces, and don't forget that little guy over there. And then tap P on the keyboard to separate the selection. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. Tab into edit mode, back into edit mode on the classroom object. Select all those bottom faces and tap P and hit selection again. Now I'm going to tab out of edit mode and come back in and name my objects. And I'm going to keep the word classroom, classroom.ceiling. And let's call this other one classroom.floor. And what I've found is that now that I've done this, I can actually use the Solidify Modifier. I don't have to go through the weirdness of extruding my different faces, but I can use the Solidify Modifier on those 3 separate pieces, and it will work really well. So I'm going to just do a thickness of -1 so that it pops outward since I measured the room from the inside. And I'll do the same thing on the ceiling. Solidify -1, and I'll do the same thing on the floor. Solidify -1. One thing I have to do is, you can see I've got a weird little angle here. I have to hit even thickness on this Solidify modifier. And I don't think it's affecting the ceiling or the floor, but just to be thorough, I'm going to hit it again. And then you can see that I've got kind of a little disconnect here. The ceiling went up, but it didn't go out with the walls. I can fix that just by scaling. So I'm going to tap S and then Shift Z to tell Blender that I want to scale in every axis except for the Z axis. And in this instance, since it's perfectly flat in Z, it probably wouldn't scale anyway. And you know, I could get really thorough here, or really precise here with the 3D cursor, but I'm just going to kind of eyeball it because I can get pretty close there. Okay, so now my ceiling and my floors, let's line that up a little better. Ceiling and my floors line up pretty well, and I have my room. So that's just kind of a quick method of modeling something that you've measured, modeling a room, modeling something you can see in real life and compare. And I hope that's helpful. Good luck.